Executive Chairman of Alpen Capital, Rohit Walia, says the Expo 2020 is going to be huge for Dubai and the Middle East as a whole. He also notes that Africa presents interesting pockets of investment opportunities. CNBC Africa's Chris Bishop caught up with him in Dubai to discuss this and more.
Well, it's going to be great for hospitality, great for retail, great for Dubai, I would say. You know, everybody will figure out. I think everybody anyway knows Dubai, but whoever few people are left in the world who don't will figure us out by next year. Yeah?
And for investment, do you think?
Investment will be huge. I mean, if you look at the infrastructure which is being built out there, I was there a couple of months ago. It's fabulous.
And the people are talking about as many as maybe 10 million visitors.
Yeah, well, I went to the Shanghai Expo. That was getting 1 million a day. Yeah.
So it may be even more than that.
Maybe even more than that.
What would you say, if anyone out there watching this, a lot of them are young entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs, what are some of the little lessons you think you can tell them in a story, you think, that would maybe help them in their careers?
You stay client-centric, you don't cut corners, you know, you deliver what you say you will deliver. Or don't promise what you can't deliver, I always say. I think that fixes the way you do your work, do your business. Yeah.
Is there anything you would have done differently in your business, you think?
Not really. Not really. I think we made a few mistakes, but then everybody makes mistakes. Yeah. So hopefully we learn from them. Yeah.
And what would you say the biggest lessons you've learned as an entrepreneur over the last few years?
I think at points in time I give a lot of leeway to some people, some colleagues, some clients, everybody. I think at points you need to know when to cut your losses. If something is not working out, you need to put a stop to it. And I have a very high frustration index. I tolerate a lot. It's a weakness and a plus point. Something one has to figure out.
And is there anything that you would do differently if you did it again?
No. Like I said, a few mistakes, and you know, if you do it again, you'll make a few different mistakes. Yeah?
You just outline, just to start with, your interest in the African continent.
So we're trying to replicate in Africa what we've done very successfully, both in the Middle East and South Asia, which are our main markets. So to start with, we started looking at the financial institutions and the finance companies who are looking for funding in these countries. We did our first transaction in Kenya, but a year and a half, 2 years ago, where we funded a small bank called Victoria Commercial Bank. Since then, we moved on. We've done a very large transaction for the Tata Group, which covered about 7 or 8 countries like Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, where we took the receivables off the books. Actually, it's a very interesting transaction. We took the receivables off the books in all these countries, put them in SPV in Abu Dhabi in the ADGM, and got it funded out here. And that's going to become very big. That's a small transaction to start with, but it'll go to $250 million over the next few months. We're looking at a bank in Nigeria. We're not looking. We're going to close that transaction, I suppose, in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And we're looking at a very interesting project in Senegal, a low-cost housing project backed by the government there.
And how big is that? This project?
The project is $500 million. It's a large project. Yeah. So there's interesting pockets of investment opportunities, I think, in that continent. One has to go out there and have a look at them. Yeah? I think sitting out here, we've just started doing Africa in the last 2.5 years. So it's been an eye-opener.
What have you encountered in your business in the continent?
In Africa, I think some of the misconceptions you have sitting out here, and we have them on many things. I think we get very influenced by what we see on TV, but it's not necessarily the truth. You go to Ghana, you go to Nigeria, and they said, be careful, this, that, and the other. Very civilized place to work in, I must say. I've been there 3 times now. Yeah.
And that's one of the great things. I've been working on this continent for 25 years, and a lot of people actually don't see what's happening on the ground. There's a lot of misconceptions from afar. How far do you think maybe perhaps the continent's selling itself a bit short, you think, when it comes to such things?
Yeah, it is selling itself short. I think there's a complete misconception on what's happening or not happening in that place. And I've personally gone to many of these countries. I plan to go again over the next few months. So how do you correct that misconception? I suppose by more programs like yours. Yeah.
And how much more pragmatic do you find perhaps some of the political leadership in some of these countries? There's a feeling that there's a tremendous move towards being more practical when it comes to inviting investment and business into the continent. How are you reading it?
Very difficult to comment. I'm not sure. Because I haven't paid too much attention to that yet, because we haven't focused on the businesses there. We've stuck to banks. Banks always need money. That's the raw material, or the finance companies. And they're fairly well managed people, at least for the few countries I've been to. And it's fairly politically stable of the 6-7 countries we are covering at present. We haven't seen anything because ultimately it's, we are investing, we are putting other people's money in there. And I haven't come across somebody who said that I will not do Nigeria, I will not do Ghana. No, there's a lot of interest.
And also, you're also looking at investments in Kenya as well, and East Africa. Just give us an idea of what you're up to there.
Kenya, again, financial institutions. Yeah, we're looking at funding financial. We're going to fund a very interesting finance company there, which was set up only for women. To lend women to run small businesses, buy houses, impact investments as they call it. So we're looking at a few such ones, not only in Kenya but in some of the other African countries too.
Could you give us a little case study there with that particular investment you're talking about in Kenya? Just in terms of how much was asked for.
I'll tell you an interesting story. So I met them last month in Kenya. So it's a finance company set up by women, only for women. And a few years ago they made a mistake. They brought in a few men, and they made a few loans to a couple of men. And that's resulted in a huge bad loss for them. So they're trying to fix it right now.
They had to write it off.
Yeah, but we're trying to get them some funding to get them rolling on.
Yeah. And what do you find when you do arrive in the African continent? What kind of reception do you normally get from the
I think people are happy to see us. People are happy that people are coming from the Middle East. Middle East is also an enigma out there. It's got pots of money and rolling in cash running out on the roads. So people are happy to see. People want to talk. People want to do business here. And a lot of African businesses have now got headquartered in Dubai. At the DMCC, we have lots of clients who've set up their family offices at the DMCC or the DIFC. So there's serious interest.
And there is an argument, isn't there, that there are a lot more links maybe than there were a decade ago, certainly 20 years ago, between Dubai and the African continent. Where do you think that's going?
It's only one way it can go. It can only go up because links have just started developing. And we had this conference here last week, I think, which the Dubai Economic Department hosted. There was a huge amount of interest from people, both people who'd flown in and from here to see what the opportunities are.
And in Southern Africa, you said you're investing in Tata Cooperation.
Not in South Africa. South Africa, we haven't done any work yet. Though the Tatas are headquartered for the African business, they're headquartered in Johannesburg. Yeah, but we've done business for them around the region, around Africa.
And fast-growing company there. I mean, what's the potential, you think?
For whom? For the Tatas?
Yeah.
Oh, fabulous potential. So what they do, it's very interesting. They sell individual buses, trucks to entrepreneurs, 1 or 2 pieces. Yeah. So all these guys who are actually truck drivers or bus drivers have become entrepreneurs. Done a fabulous job of doing this across 8 or 9 countries, I think. Yeah. They sell farm equipment to people who cannot afford to buy it over long. So we are actually working with them to set up a leasing company in Africa to finance this side of the business and to manage the foreign currency exposures there.
So this is part of what you do, isn't it? This impact investing as well. What other projects are you looking at the moment?
Well, all the banks and finance companies we are looking to put money into need to have a story around impact investment, SME funding, low-cost housing, whatever would be helpful for the environment, for the people in general. Yeah, so women inclusion, that's a big topic of discussion these days. Yeah.
When you're scouting for investments or looking, what do you look for in the continent? What are the beacons for you that attract you?
Management. How are they managing the business? What the numbers look like? What the plans going forward are? And then many of these places are very well managed. I mean, I was very impressed with Ghana, for example, of all the financial institutions I met there. They know exactly what they're doing, and that was not the impression I had before I went there. So it's a learning experience.
And how much business are you doing now, and what's your target for the future in the African continent?
See, we've got about 6 or 7 clients at the moment, and I expect that to at least treble up by the end of next year.
And money-wise, what's the target?
Money-wise, it's something we don't like to talk about. Yeah. But yeah, we should do anything in revenue terms, as far as we are concerned, anything between $3 to $5 million next year.
And also, you're on other continents too. You're in Sri Lanka. You're in Cambodia.
Yeah. Similar concept. So in Sri Lanka, we have financed, I would say, nearly every bank there, about $750 million over the last 2 years. Banks and finance companies. Cambodia financed a very interesting company there called Prasak. Very profitable, does very well.
What does it do?
What does it do? So I'll give you another good story on Prasak. They open at 4 in the morning. So I was there one morning to take a look at what the CEO had been telling me, and the fisherwoman walks in, borrows $10, goes, buys fish, sells fish, and comes back and returns it in the evening. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's another question a lot of entrepreneurs, I'm sure, they're asking, how do you actually zero in on these companies? It's probably not every day you bump into someone who knows.
Word of mouth, I think. Word of mouth. You talk to people, and once you've done a few such transactions, you get introduced to more such people who had, when I talked to you about this finance company doing women only in Kenya, we've got one we're looking at in Nepal, we've got 2 in India, and 1 in Sri Lanka.
And due diligence on these small operations?
Very easy to do. It's not so simple. You see, like I said, you meet management, you figure out what they're doing, and they're not so small, by the way. They're not so small. Talk to people, talk to the auditors, talk to people who deal with them. These are small countries. It's not very difficult to find out. Yeah.
And you're also into Myanmar as well, which has had somewhat of a troubled past.
Checkered history,
shall we say. But you're going in there, and
well, I was there. I've just come back yesterday from there. I spent 3 days in that place. Very, very interesting. It's a world which has been closed for I don't know how many years. So just starting to develop. Great potential, nice people. They need everything. There's nothing which cannot be done in Myanmar. So they're putting the rules, regulations in place.
What areas are you looking to invest in there in Myanmar?
Banks and finance companies, yeah, at the moment.
That was Rohit Walia, Executive Chairman of Alpen Capital. Well, that's it on Beyond Markets for today. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Remember, you can watch the show at 5 p.m. West African time daily and have access to all previous episodes of the show on our website. That's cnbcafrica.com. You can also stay engaged with the hashtag Beyond Markets. And of course, you can send your thoughts and your comments to my Twitter handle too. It's at Esther O. Awuni. From myself and the team, it's bye for now.